Happy Tuesday, everyone. On behalf of AAE Board Member and Director of Professional Development, Neil Otto, it's my pleasure to welcome you to another webinar hosted by the American Association for Employment and Education. Today's topic is Unconventional Teacher Strategies to Engage Students. My name is Tim Dubert, and I serve as AAE's Executive Director. Please allow me to cover just a few housekeeping matters before we begin with today's topic. During the webinar, all attendees will be muted. However, you are encouraged to submit questions or comments using the Q&A or chat features within Zoom. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to attendees and AAE members. If your organization is not a current member of AAE, please visit our website, aaee.org, to learn more about our activities and resources. We are a professional association intent on positively impacting education through professional connections. Related to that mission, we connect the three critical groups involved with the preparation, recruitment, and retention of pre-K through 12 educators, that being university professionals and others who prepare educators, school system professionals and others who recruit, hire, and retain them, and of course, educator candidates themselves. We offer annual publications such as the Job Search Handbook for Educators. We conduct an educator supply and demand survey each fall and winter, resulting in a spring report. We co-host the careersforeducators.com job board with Kappa Delta Pi. We host webinars such as this one on topics relevant to our membership. We sponsor teacher scholarships and school system mini grants to support teacher pipelines. We co-host virtual education career fairs with Career Fair Plus, including a nationwide event tomorrow, April 27th. We co-host an annual national working group on teacher retention with Upbeat, and we host an annual conference and education career fair each fall. The October 2022 event will be held in Baltimore, Maryland. The pandemic was a life-changing event not only for our students, but our faculty and staff as well. One aspect that greatly changed was our ability to adapt, innovate, and reflect. No greater impact did the pandemic have than on our educational system. I'm pleased to be joined today by Stephen Lowry. He is the executive principal of Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES Career and Technical Education Center, a technical high school located in the suburbs of New York City. In addition to his role as executive principal, Steve is an adjunct instructor for Marist College located in Poughkeepsie, New York. He has over 26 years of experience in education, both at the secondary and post-secondary level. Steve will share his school's journey through a school year on its return and the unconventional methods used to build a school community, create a positive climate, and heal the faculty and staff in this post-pandemic educational world. He'll include the strategies, failures, and lessons learned from trying new ideas to improve the lives of the entire school community. Thank you for being here today, Steve. I'll now turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tim. And it's nice to have people here that hear the story. Not only will I give kind of a teacher perspective, but also from a leadership perspective as well. And it's no secret, you know, the pandemic changed our lives forever, and it certainly changed the role of education. So I am going to take you through some things, some case study stories of what happened in my school. And, you know, I have a short video I'd like you to see as well. And then definitely, you know, I want to make this as interactive as possible. So if there are questions, you know, please feel free to put them into the chat. But just so you have an idea of, you know, my school and the demographics for this. So I am north of New York City, you know, less than an hour from Manhattan, New York. Our school is what's called a cooperative educational system. So we have schools, high schools in the region that we serve. So it's 18 different districts. And in those 18 different districts, we have juniors and seniors that come to us for part of the day to learn a technical trade or, you know, an innovative program that they can't get back at their high school. That's just a little bit about us. We have, you know, 1,200 students that come through the door every day. We have block scheduling. So kids are with us for 2 hours, and you know, we have college credit available to them as well as learning a trade. So it's kind of a a menagerie of things that happen on a daily basis. So I just want to take you through, what happened to our world as it happened to everybody else. But being in New York and being in Westchester County, at the beginning of this pandemic, we were the epicenter of COVID. And our school was one of the first to shut down back in 2020. And that fateful day on March 13th, when my teachers walked out the door and I walked out the door, we wouldn't come back until September 21st of 2020. So we were totally, no preparing. We were making packets. We were, technology was not our strong suit. And, really how teachers were used to delivering instruction. So imagine this. Imagine that an electrical program where it's all hands-on and it's all like, how do you wire something? All of a sudden, there was no hands-on component. So think about like your HVAC system. If your boiler goes out in the middle of the night, do you want somebody that actually had experience working on it? Or do you want to do like kind of what we do? We kind of look stuff up on YouTube and, go from there or read about it. But that's what our students had been facing. And, especially for teachers, that's all they knew. And that's all they had accustomed to. And then the bad 4-letter word had entered our vocabulary, and that was Zoom. And, we couldn't do the things that, regular schools were doing with Zoom because our programs were so unique. But when we finally got back in the swing of things, we knew that, with the technology shift and with Zoom, we knew there was a new way to deliver instruction. But what we had happen was, being in New York, especially, and being with the amount of death that we were seeing from COVID, we had a lot of fear. And, the school districts that we service, a lot of them did not return in September of 2020. They went to what was called hybrid scheduling, where it was every other day. We had some schools that remained remote for the first quarter of the school year. And we had students that opted for remote instruction because of just the general fear they had of being in groups and seeing other students, and just the fear of the unknown, or they had a sick family member at home. And what was interesting is, how some teachers, we totally forgot when they were remote. And one in particular was our new phys ed teacher that we had hired back in 2019, just before the pandemic had started. We had hired him right in November of 2019, and then everybody was out the door. So imagine, with all these protocols and everything else that we had to deliver, phys ed was definitely a big challenge. How would you do this with kids masked up, touching things? What could you possibly do? And, just doing my daily rounds and just seeing if everybody was okay and sticking thermometers in people's faces. I did everything completely different, and I got away from what I was doing best, and that was interacting with people and getting to know students. And as I was observing my school, just to see the fear and the students that were, also in fear, I took a glimpse at our physical education teacher that we had forgotten about during the whole shutdown. And what I see him doing is he's playing a game of cornhole. Inside, masked up, people separated. He had taken our auditorium. He had moved all the chairs on his own. And, he had his measuring tape. He measured out 6 feet, kids were on either end. And all of a sudden, it was a flashback of what life used to be like before the pandemic. And he in particular was like a Pied Piper. He had kids around him, and it was all safe, and they were having fun, and they were laughing. And I'm watching this, and the first question he asked me was, Mr. Lowry, was this something I could do? Was this okay? And, because he wasn't used to it, he didn't ask. He didn't, run it by anybody. He did what he thought was the best way. And the rationale he came up with in the very beginning, as he's asking, was this okay to do? Is he says, listen, I'm keeping everybody safe. We're disinfecting, we're doing this, we're doing that. And my answer was, of course, this is okay. This is okay. And, here's what we have to remember. When we're engaging students, we're promoting teamwork, we're building relationships, right? And this is all okay. And, what the research tells us is that the teachers that put forth the effort to building a positive relationship with their students, they're compensated because their students improve both cognitively, behaviorally, and emotionally. And that was so important, especially when people were isolated. And for us, we were isolated longer than some of the areas in the rest of the country. So, again, when we didn't have interaction, we thought we were coming back. We thought it would just be a quick break, and boom, everything kind of evaporated on everybody. So he was on to something, right? He was definitely on to something. And, looking up, research to kind of validate this, right? Benson and Sterrett said that, when classroom teachers stress the high expectations for all their students without building a classroom community, they confront many obstacles. But teachers should be authentic with their own emotions and provide genuine support to help students assimilate high expectations in themselves. So if we take a minute just to think about that for a second, what was he doing? It looked like a simple game of cornhole. It looked like, he's killing time, to the average person that would come through. But what he was really doing was building a classroom community. And really, he was telling the students, it was okay. The fear that you have for the 45 minutes you're with me, we have to let that go. And he was very genuine with them, and he was very honest with them. And again, he was one of the highest attending classes that we had. Students that were coming every other day, right, were coming every day to see him, even if it was just a connect. And, like I mentioned, he was the Pied Piper. He really was. And he really built such a school community that I'll talk about how the ending wound up in tears for everybody. But what he found was this, right? What he found is that his student attendance rate shot up. All right. So in September, when maybe he was seeing about 10 students, he was over 35, right, in a short period of time, because people saw that it was safe, it was okay. They were having fun, and that was a big thing. And what happened was the students themselves became their own little community. We had never seen a group of students that were connected so much that this group, that after graduation, they still kept in touch with each other, which was something we had never seen before. So they felt that spirit of community. They felt like the teacher was genuinely interested in them, but also they were learning at the same time. Although cornhole was one of the things that they did, it was a way to break the ice, to get people back into the swing of things, to say, hey, you know what? It's really going to be okay. All right. And then I have, and probably in talking about COVID, I shouldn't have used a word like the contagion effect. But anyway, it was contagious. All right. It really was contagious. And what I was starting to see was more and more students that were coming in the door because, you know what? They saw it was okay. And really, it was the thing I encouraged every teacher to do, is build that relationship. Don't worry about the curriculum. Don't worry about like the national, certification tests that you're giving at the end of the year. If we can't emotionally put students in a good place, all the great lessons you have just go out the window. And, more and more teachers began to buy into that. Did everybody buy into it? No, certainly not. But my job as a leader was to tell them that it's okay. and to encourage them to try different things. Because at this point, when we went out in March 13th of 2020, there was no rule book. There was nothing. We had to write the playbook as we went. And I continued that effort when we actually physically came back to school, is saying there's no playbook. We need to keep continuing. All right. And now I'm going to tell you about the 10-year teacher that was here. He teaches an honors level medical terminology and a physical therapy course. Very intensive. It's mainly for honors students. The students that come here receive college credit, and they also get their high school credit. Now, quotes from him was always, "I don't have time to finish my curriculum." And I'm sure that the ones that are out listening today, if you're a teacher, you definitely know that feeling, right? It's now approaching May, the school year is ending. I'm sure there's probably 20 things that you want to get to, and you might not get to it. And it's just that stress of feeling, oh my God, how am I going to get all this stuff done? All right. But now he's observing this brand new teacher that's playing cornhole, but he has a different twist on it. All right. He didn't want to do a game environment. All right. But instead, what he thought is he read his class properly. He saw the stress level on them. And what he did is said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You give me, out of 2 hours, you give me a solid hour and 35 minutes. If you can do that, the last part of this, we're going to do a walk. And they started to do a mile walk at the end of each class. All right. And what we labeled them were walk and talks. And I was joining them on the walks as well. And they served two purposes. One, I was able to make connections with the students. All right. But the second was they were the sounding boards. And what began to happen was they would ask me direct questions. One of the things that was disappointing for that group is our superintendent decided to cancel in-person graduation. So they were going to have a virtual graduation ceremony, which the students were highly against. They wanted some sense of normalcy. They wanted to graduate as a normal, traditional setting. But going on the walks and talks and them building up trust with me, they were okay to ask those questions of me. So on the walk and talk, they would say, hey, Mr. Lowry, we're not really understanding the decision of graduation. We're seeing that the COVID numbers are dropping. How could that be? How could we not have an in-person ceremony? And it was a simple dialogue back and forth. Right? They respected it. They didn't always agree with any decision, but also they respected that I took the time out and not to dodge it and say, no, this is just because it is this is why we're not doing it. And the teacher started to take on that model as well. You know, it was a difficult lesson that you gave us on physical therapy today. We didn't quite understand the whole structure of the knee. Well, you know, they're outside, they're in a great environment, they're out of the classroom setting. He was able to talk to them, you know, very candidly. And they were able to reteach material as he's going for the walk. But again, what happened is that people started to see that. They started to see his attendance started to go up. He was connecting more with his students. His students were really excited to be there. You could see it on their faces. And more teachers incorporated these walks and talks, right? Not every day, which was fine. But what they were doing was soliciting feedback from the people that were with them every single day. All right. And again, it's important to remember that the stakeholders, and there could be our students, they could be, you know, administrators that you have, it could be anybody, colleagues, whatnot. All right. It's important to get them involved in the process. And again, make them feel, you know, as they're part of this and part of the decision-making process, even though you may have to make the difficult decision, right? If they have some sense of what's going on, right, then they're going to buy into whatever you're teaching them, right? You could be teaching them the most complex subject, but if there's no buy-in, right, you're going to have even more difficulty. So again, as a teacher, one of the strategies that we saw here was to involve everybody in the process. You know, okay, here we go. This is what I expect for an hour and a half or hour and 35 minutes to get to this walk. This is what we need to do. All right. And what he was finding was this. The immediate effect was that the attendance popped up. Again, there was more people opting for in-person learning. But here was like a long-term effect on it, right? Because we're seeing it even to this day, because that word spread. So, you know, when he did it this one time, when he did it this 1 year, people started to see it. And then more students enrolled in his program. In fact, he was our highest attendance rate from 2020 when we came back to today, right? He runs at a 98% attendance rate. And usually the students that are absent, it's legitimate causes. You know, it's either, God forbid, they've gotten COVID or they've gotten ill or something's happened. So they want to come to school. And now what he's done is he's actually increased the walk and talk, right? So he's done, okay, give me 90 minutes. So the theme of his class is just give me 90, right? And the 90 minutes, they're working. And you know what? If it's like he feels that, okay, maybe it's not 90 today, it's maybe 85 minutes. Okay, he adjusts when needing, and it's knowing your audience to do that. So not only do they do walks and talks, they do other kinds of activities as well, just to keep moving, to keep their heads in the game, because then the next day, they know it's going to be an intensive 90 minutes. So in that 90 minutes, he makes it count. So there's not, you know, a lot of downtime. There's a lot of, let's put our nose to the book. And if you give me that 90, this is what happens at the end. All right, so now we're going to go to the 20-year teacher. All right, and you know, she's been here 20 years and she's very strict, very, very strict. This is how it goes by the book, right? And it's very strict protocols, but yet, you know, being so strict as she is she does average about 30 students per class. She's very successful at what she does. So even though she's very strict, you know, 95 of her students pass a national health certification, which is not easy to do, not easy in the least for a high school student. So let's see what she was doing. All right. So being that she was very strict, when she started, her attendance rate shot down right in the beginning. Students said, man, you know, I'm not coming. All right. And she was averaging, you know, low teens, sometimes single digit students. And out of that too, because remember when I told you in the beginning, we had an alternating schedule with our district. So we had some that came one day, others that came at different. On top of that, if she had single digits, they weren't the same kids that were coming consistently every day. So now you had a different mix. So out of that 30, you know, you had 9 one day, you had 11 the other day, but none of those were the same kids that came consistently. And, you know, again, she was doing the best she could, but even the students were frustrated too, because, you know, they felt like they weren't moving forward. And it was just kind of like they were treading water. They were sitting here and they were doing the very best that they can. And it wasn't good enough. And this teacher who does the best job I have on staff of reflecting saw this. And when she was frustrated as well, we hit the wall in February. And we've all hit that wall, believe me. So how did we help this teacher move forward? Well, we put her with the 2 people that were having success. And she was open to it. So that physical education teacher that I told you in the very beginning, and, you know, the other veteran teacher I just told you about. And what we did is we had, you know, a series of meetings. So this wasn't an easy process, right? So we had to get everybody on board and on the same page. And she was definitely not a game person. So, you know, giving them some kind of reward at the end was not in her wheelhouse. She also liked to wear heels. So she said, walks and talks, not happening. Fashion was more important than comfort. So what she did is she actually came up with a solution, and she said, all right, you know what we're going to do? Give me Monday through Thursday. If I can get you Monday through Thursday, Friday, we're going to have a fun day. And that fun day could have ranged from anything. They would have done some kind of interactive game, not really related to the health curriculum, but related to something else, something that the students were interested in. She would have the students individually plan an activity that they wanted to do, right? But that was Friday was fun day. But in order to do that, right, they had to have a good week, and they had to attain 40 points for that week. And I'll show you the rubric that she used in a minute. All right, but what was interesting was she didn't evaluate the students. The students evaluated themselves on a daily basis. So this is what the rubric looked like. All right. So again, it was a 10-point day. So it's a little bit different than, give me 90 minutes, give me an hour and a half or hour and 35. This is your grade for the day. And what she found, she was very skeptical on it. But what she found was that she found that students were very honest with themselves. So here's what her 10-point day looked like. Were you on time or were you tardy? And kids were honest. I was 10 minutes late. So they gave themselves 1 out of 2. Right? Attitude, energy level. If you came in and you really gave it your all, that was worth 2 points. If you did it for some of the class and didn't do it for the whole class, well, they would evaluate themselves a 1 out of 2. How much time did you actually spend on that task? Right? We know that, students will drift. They're not going to pay attention, whatnot. But I thought what was interesting is 2 things here at the end. The show me a product. And they had to produce something. All right. So whatever the class structure was, if it was like, okay, we're going to learn, the anatomy of the wrist. All right. Then all those bones in the wrist, whatever they were, had to be on their product sheet. So they would show her, yeah, here's all the bones in the wrist. So they had to actually produce something. So it couldn't be like, yeah, I'm paying attention. I'm giving it my all. Okay, so what? Let's put your money where your mouth is, right? And the last thing was, which was very interesting, was the reflective summary. Be honest with yourself and say, did I really do all these things? Did I give myself a satisfactory grade, or did I really fudge it today? And she was getting some very honest feedback, right? They would hand that in each day. All right, because she was more interested in the reflective summary. The other stuff, it's like, okay, you graded yourself, but really she was after that summary. And what she found is that students wrote some pretty heartfelt things. What's going on in my house? I was a little distracted today, but tomorrow I promise will be a better day. And that way she could keep an eye on that student the next day. And that was like kind of an entry point for the next day. Like, hey, how's everything going? How's your day today? So it was different strategies that we hadn't seen before that was really trying to connect with students in a different way and without singling them out. And this was very important to her. And this was a very effective tool for her as well. And I started out with all the teachers by showing them this video that I would like to show you at the moment. Let's stop my share screen for a minute. Okay. And we started out our year with this. The whole faculty saw this, and it's simple. It doesn't say anything. It's just looking and trying to get inspired. And you could see here at the quote, when I press play, you'll see it a little bit more. But I'm going to pause it. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders. Sorry about that. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. And this was the message that I wanted all my teachers to see in the beginning, and not to give up, because it was very easy to give up. It was very easy to throw in the towel. That 20-year teacher, I don't need to do anything different. It's worked for me all these other years. But this was a different ballgame that we were seeing. The first guy that I talked to you about, the phys ed teacher, he didn't know any better, right? He didn't know any better. He was just he was throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck, right? And then we have somebody in between that's not quite the newbie, not quite the 20-year veteran, but was really, overwhelmed, really overwhelmed, saying, I can't do this. Like, I got a curriculum to teach. I can't take time out to do this other stuff. And this is where the video kind of came in to importance for all of them, because all of us, whether we're a classroom teacher, school administrator, somebody that does PD, whatever the case is, we're all leaders. We're all leaders. We may not think it, but we're definitely leaders. And what sets us apart from everybody else is we're not afraid to try things. And we're not afraid of failure. I used to have a sign in my school and I took it down saying failure was not an option. Right? And then I took that down because you know what? I want people to fail, as strange as it seems. That's the only way you're going to get better. It's the only way we're going to get better. And, once that message started to resonate with students that it's okay to fail, don't give up. Right? And that's what this pandemic had faced our group. Giving up, like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do, half on Zoom, half in person. Let's erase the word can't. And this is what inspired some of them to go that extra mile. So, the message that I sent to them is that you saw some things that pretty much looked impossible. And look what they overcame, look what they've done. And, that's how you have to approach teaching. especially during this time. Um, it's different. This was a game changer. And, we kind of have to stop living in the past, because what's interesting is in New York, especially, the message was by our then former governor Cuomo, we have to reimagine what education looks like. And, with all this technology, all this Zoom and, everything else, but what I was witnessing happen was we went right back to where we were. Right back to where we were. What did we really change? Yeah, these sprinkling of stories, it changed some people, didn't change everybody, but we went right back to what we were comfortable with. And, as educators, as professionals, we have to take a step back and just see, what are we doing? Are we really doing the service for the students? Are we really getting to know them? Am I just focused on my curriculum, or am I really focusing on the student as a whole? Right? And we know, the media, everything else that's going on in the world, it's not very good. Right? And sometimes when our students come in the door, that's the safest place for them. Now, do we shove curriculum down them, or do we do other things with them? And that's my challenge to everybody is, don't do what's comfortable, right? If anything, this should have made us all uncomfortable what was happening. And it even changed the way I had done business as well. And, when we got through that first year and we came back, it was challenging. I mean, I was contact tracing people, weekends. It was a 24/7 type job. And, I was wondering, what am I doing? Like, I didn't get into education to stick a thermometer in somebody's face, to, ask them how they're doing, like health-wise. Like, oh yeah, I'm concerned about you, but okay, tell me, when did you get your symptom? When did this happen? Who did you come in contact with? Right? I isolated myself more than I should have. And, there was the aha moment that I woke up and when I started seeing my teachers engaging in stuff that I hadn't seen before, then I was like, you know what? I gotta like step it up myself. If I'm expecting them to do it, I got to do it as well. And, really my whole goal was, let me just get through this year and then next year we'll start again. But, as I started to see the ending of the school year, first time in my life, and I've been at my school for 15 years, I couldn't get students to go home. On the last day, they did not want to go home. And they were crying. They did not want to leave. I mean, normally, their school day was over by 12 o'clock for the seniors. And it was 2 o'clock and they were still in the parking lot, and it was like, guys, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. But they just felt like such a connection to the school, but they were flowing of tears. And I'm thinking, my God, what a great, bunch of students that we'll probably never see again until this year. And we've seen that same group, different faces, but it's because of what the teachers were doing that built that community, that built that togetherness, that I'm going to see that again in a few months, or in a few weeks, I should say, when they graduate. And, I had to be honest, and I had to be honest with them, and I had to be honest with myself. And I told my teachers that too. The biggest room in the world, here's your trivia question for the webinar, but the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. And, and I said, if you guys can remember that, and remember not to just rest on what's worked for you in the past and continue to fight and challenge yourself, and, don't accept mediocrity, then you're going to be a success regardless of what it looks like. If all your kids bomb the test at the end of the year, because, this is what we do in education. We measure you by, performance and tests and stuff. you're going to be a success regardless. And that's what I instilled in them. I said, I want you to try something. And better yet, I want you to try something and have it fail. Because then you're going to learn, right? If it goes too easy, I'll just do that next year. It's too easy. But again, I had to be honest with myself too and say, I didn't have a very good year because I was so worried about stuff I really shouldn't have been worried about. And I focused all my time on that. And this is one of the things I was worried about, that, I'm going to have to wrestle kids for masks. I was worried that teachers were going to be throwing students out left and right, because they're not wearing their mask. I was worried about, kids coming in sick. And none of that happened. None of that happened. I had worried for nothing. I had spent the whole summer and the beginning of the school year waiting for this to happen. And why didn't it happen? Because they told me they felt such a connection to the school. They appreciated the teachers that worked hard for them. They appreciated them to have the open and honest communication. But mainly, they were really appreciative that we kept them safe. So it just goes to show me, and hopefully you too, that connections mean everything. If we were just rule here, this and that, and we didn't get a chance to know our students, I probably would have been dealing with everything I was anticipating. But I didn't deal with it once, not one issue. I had 0 suspensions on anybody not, because we had a stiff penalty. You don't wear the mask and they ask you to and you refuse, you're gone. And we even had it as a stiff penalty that you won't come back to the program. And that didn't happen one time. Didn't happen. Somebody came in sick, because we had started off making those connections and telling them what the risk was. So what were the lessons that I learned in all of this, and lessons that you can learn as well? And we got to put trust in our teachers. We got to support one another. All right. And my job is to support them trying new things and doing activities. But we also have to trust one another, because, as you know, teaching is a lonely business sometimes. We feel like we're on the island. We're afraid to connect with somebody because I don't want them stealing my idea, or, and that's what education really is about, is all this borrowing and learning from each other. We all started with this one teacher. It really did, that he wasn't afraid. And, if I had shut him down and I had said, man, was this okay? No, it's not okay. We wouldn't have had what we had. So I had to trust him, and I did. I fully trust him, and I fully trust him now. I mean, him of all people, and I bring him up because I'm the proudest of him. I'm proud of all my teachers, but I'm really proud of him because he was really dealt, the deck of cards was stacked so far against him, right? Because he was the strictest, phys ed, you have to keep a mask on, students can't breathe. And oh, by the way, wintertime, you're all inside. Fall wasn't so bad, you can go outside. But winter came, and winter, everybody's inside. And he worked his behind off to develop a curriculum that was going to keep kids safe, but also engaged. But also he was going to teach teamwork, leadership skills, and he wanted to build that enthusiastic environment. And students came. And all that he definitely built, and we saw the end results at the end of the year. And I had to trust him, and that anybody that's in a supervisory capacity, why have people if you can't trust them, right? They shouldn't be working in your school. They shouldn't be around you. So, again, as any teacher, if you're a mentor to a teacher, if you're a teacher yourself, be creative. Try the new ideas. No matter how crazy it seems, right? Try that new idea. We had a social studies teacher here that taught World War I through a simulation. Seems weird, but we've had Germany win World War II. How's that possible, right? Well, because they were given actual stats and figures, and those students in that group fighting World War II had a better strategy than was done. That's really bizarre, right? But these kids really thought about it, and the creativity. And that always stuck out with me as well. Wow, simulating World War II and you have different outcomes. Well, that leads to a whole other avenue and a whole bunch of other questions. But to try that idea, and it is unconventional, you have to give people the support. And as colleagues, we have to support them as well. We have to support each other. The other thing is, and I, kind of just alluded to that, is that teaching is a lonely business. Right now, add in a pandemic, add in, faculty meetings where nobody's coming together, add in other regulations that, stay in your classroom, don't go out because if somebody gets COVID, you're contact tracing everybody. But you have to make sure you're connected. And if your administration is not connecting you, then you go out and make those connections. Because especially if somebody's doing something great, why not share it? Because you might be struggling, the person next to you might be struggling with something, and somebody may be doing it like, wow, how did they do all that? Right? And it all starts with just talking to people and listening and making sure we're connected. It goes a long way. It goes a long way. It's definitely some of the stress you don't take home with you. And, further research says when we work together, we create a better learning experience. Teacher collaboration positively impacts student achievement and allows us as educators to explore new territory. And I always say why I got into the field of administration is because I recycled my lessons one time. In the 11 years that I was a teacher, I said, I threw out everything at the end of the year and I started new in September. And I said, the first time that I repeat something that following September, I need to be doing something else. And that happened in year 11. And I spent 1 year going to get my administrative certification. And I, made the jump because I said, I'm not good to anybody if I'm recycling something. But to understand what teachers go through, I'm an adjunct at Marist College in Poughkeepsie in the history department, and I'm doing the lesson planning. And every semester I'm throwing stuff out and doing it all fresh again. But I understand what it's like, the grading, doing some kids on Zoom at the time, some kids in person, and all that other stuff that goes with it. Because it's important for me as a school administrator that if I'm going to have something or recommend something, that I model the behavior I want to see. So that's very important. And, again, what we had happen is we unintentionally created a culture that, teachers were starting to look at young teachers as not really a threat, but somebody that's giving them really good ideas. And they didn't feel that before. It was always like, oh, I don't know, what that person's doing, I don't want to get involved because they may be trying to take my job, or, who knows what their MO is. And, I would deal with that. But then this pandemic hits and they see somebody having success and we say, you know what, it's okay. You can have that same success. So don't be afraid of anybody. Right. And again, don't be afraid to try that. If it fails, so what? Something that you can't do again, because here's what it is, right? This is what it really boils down to, is trust yourself. Don't give up on stuff that's been successful in the past, but also don't be afraid to incorporate new ideas. And that's why I'm going to use me as the example here, is that I always prided myself on being a hands-on leader. I always thought it was important to, get to know people on a personal level. Not too much, but, to get to know who they are and to get to know who my students are. So out of the 1,200 students, I have a pretty good handle on probably 1,000 of them. And I know something about them. And, that's what I always prided myself. And then when COVID hit, I became something that I never was. And the things I point out to you here is I isolated. Teachers told me, hey, I haven't seen you in like forever. You still work here? But what they didn't know is how much I was doing behind the scenes. And you know what? That's not who I was. And this is where I want you to hone in on. It was self-induced. Nobody told me to do these things. I had made up what I thought I had to do. No one told me to isolate. Nobody told me just to kind of sit in your office and don't get out and don't interact with people. And that's what you have to just be aware of yourself, is that we can get pigeonholed into things we think are happening, but in reality, did anybody tell us? And it usually comes from within. And, you know, where it all changed for me is I went back to being me. You know, I threw it all out the window. I said, I got nothing to lose. And, you know, visiting classrooms, being a clown sometimes to the students. But what I really was doing was connecting with them and making them want to come to school and making them say, you know, it's okay. I'm afraid too. You know, and I was honest. And once I started to be honest with the students, you know, because I always, you know, during this COVID time, I was like always not trying to worry people and just saying, you know, don't worry about it. You know, it's fine. But I realized that's not who I am. You know, I have to be honest. I have to be upfront. And that's what I had to do. And that's what I encourage my teachers to be. I said, if you're afraid, you're afraid. That's okay. There's no shame in that. But going about taking it out on people, that's not the right thing to do. And it's really not you. So as I conclude today, you know, we all take on these roles for whatever reasons. We want to make a difference. We want to, you know, correct wrongs that we've seen in our life and try to, you know, be there. But never lose sight of who you are. And as I tell my teachers, never compromise who you are for anybody. My role that I saw it is I wanted to be a positive person in the educational world. And for a long time, I felt like I succeeded at that. But, you know, with every negative force that hit me, I asked myself the one question: am I still good enough to do this job? I questioned myself. And at the end, when I did some self-reflecting, I said, yes, I am. I am still good enough. I still have it. So this is the challenge that I'm going to leave you on this closing note. Is your job is not to be better than somebody else, right? We all have different ability levels. We all have different strengths. So to compare ourselves to somebody else, it's not fair. It doesn't do ourselves justice. So what I close on is this: your job is not to be better than anybody else. Your job is to be better than you were the day before. And if you can remember that, you will be successful regardless of what the situation is. And on that note, that is the conclusion of my presentation. I really appreciate everybody's attention. If you have questions, I will be glad to answer them. I know we still have a couple of minutes if everybody wants to run for the door. Hit the leave button.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
That
Thank
was
you for
awesome.
being a great audience.
That was
Thank
awesome. So you gave the example of the 3 teachers, and it sounds like maybe they had some influence on other teachers to change their approach. Are you seeing, I mean, we're not quite out of it yet, right? The pandemic, you and I were talking
Yep.
before the webinar got started, but are you seeing those innovative approaches? Does the walk and talk continue? Does some of the other, you know, different approaches from these teachers continue?
Yes, it's still continuing, and we actually have even more teachers that have jumped on board that were slow to, you know, get it all going. But now what's interesting is my phys ed teacher goes into 6 classes that he's not scheduled for to teach teachers, like, it's okay, we can play this game on a Friday, or it's okay that we could do this in the middle of the week. It's okay that we can refocus. And it's been some of our, you know, teachers that were very obstinate and just like, nah, you know, I like what I'm doing, but then realize within themselves, like, you know, I got to change a little bit. And I see that my students the lights are not going on like they used to. I need some help. And it was good that they have a colleague that is non-threatening to them and that could go in and kind of just be the co-teacher for the day and also incorporate with the regular teacher. And like I said, he's now in demand. It used to be he was teaching his classes, but we've actually freed up his schedule to work with various teachers, once, it's usually like once a week or sometimes it's once every 2 week cycle. So yes, we're starting to see more teachers pick this up because they realize, the students that are coming in have, a lot more issues and, they're not focusing on the curriculum, that they need to do something different.
When you look at your teacher retention as compared to other schools, school environments in that you're familiar with, or nearby or not, how, do you see that you have you're doing better than them in terms of holding on to your talent?
Yes, we have on average a 0.5% turnover rate.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. And if it is, it's usually, I lost my social worker mid-year because she was moving back to family. It wasn't anything. We don't have people that voluntarily want to leave for a better opportunity. They want to stay. So anybody that, goes is usually because of family situation or retirement. But yes, we have it down less than 1% that go.
That's incredible.
Because of this, because we encourage, we're a non-threatening environment to the teachers, but also too, it works both ways. We do have expectations that we want them to meet, and it's not fun and games, but at the end of our day, that teacher there that's very strict by the rules, that's doing a Monday through Thursday with a rubric, the attendance rate is high, but there's other programs too. I don't want to paint it like, we're the best in the world, but I have other programs too where the teacher has been there a while. He's not receptive to ideas, not receptive to collaborating, and his enrollment, he has a lot of attendance issues, and we try to work and we try to sneak in teachers where we can, and just doesn't stick. So but overall, our teachers love what they do. They feel supported, and that's half the battle.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we are at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour, depending on your perspective. But thank you so much for your time and your presentation today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it so much, and we'll have the recording up on our site in the not so distant future, so other people can listen and watch and enjoy.
Very good. Well, thank you all, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the day. So
thanks so much. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.